Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter 4, entitled Transcendental Knowledge, text 30. So we'll recite the Sanskrit. Sarve pyete yagya vido yagya kshapita kalmasa yagya shistamrita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam. Word for word. Sarve, all. Api, although apparently different. Ete, this. Yagya vidaha, conversant with the purpose of performing sacrifices. Yagya kshapita, being cleansed as the result of such performances. Kalmasaha, of sinful reactions. Yagya shista, of the result of such performances of yagya. Amrita pujaha, those who have tasted such nectar. Yanti, do approach Brahma, the Supreme, Sanatanam, eternal atmosphere. The translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. All these, so please also translation, repeat after me. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme, eternal atmosphere. Purport. From the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifice, namely sacrifice of one's possessions, study of the Vedas or philosophical doctrines, and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the senses. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform, full of knowledge, full bliss, and full life. This platform is in the eternal atmosphere, or Brahman atmosphere. All the above mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but also at the end he enters into eternal kingdom of God, either merging into the impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Staptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishvari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the verse again. Translation. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminit Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshitarne. Hare Krishna. So today, verse 430, it is a summary of previous verses. So each of the series of previous verses were listing different types of yagyas or sacrifices one can perform. There were sacrifice of knowledge, sacrifice of senses into fire of the senses, sacrifice senses in the mind, sacrifice one's possessions, so many varieties, sacrifices as a worship of devatas, so many variety for all the different type of persons. So basically this discussion comes about because one has to act. Krishna says that he has created this varnas and ashramas where everyone is somehow or other fitting in and situated, so everyone has to act. So how to act? Because the whole thing about action starts because Arjuna does not want to act, so Krishna says him to act. So then the point about action in action and inaction in action comes about. So it seems like very twisting the tongue, action in action in action in action. You cannot even understand what is it. So action in action and inaction in action. So when seemingly there is action, but there is no action. Because really what is action? Action it what brings reaction. But when you perform it as yagya, there is no reaction. So it means it's inaction. So it's a funny way of saying. So there is, in Sanskrit it would be karma and akarma. Yeah. And there is also vikarma as well mentioned. So all these different types of sacrifices are there. Like it says, for example, some sacrifice the hearing process of the senses in the fire of mental control. So it is specifically talking about Naishtika Brahmacharis, about control of mind, that they sacrifice senses such as ear, the activity of hearing, in the control of mind, which means that they hear that thing which helps them to control mind and achieve finally a samadhi. So then others who are also considered brahmacharis, but not Naishtik brahmacharis, but householder brahmacharis, they sacrifice objects into senses, objects of senses in the senses. So it means that senses touch the object, but they remain detached. So it seems so tricky how to understand, starting with action in action and then sacrifice the senses in the fire of senses. So it's difficult to understand sometimes when we just read these verses. But Srila Prabhupada says the main purpose of all this is to control the senses. And some other options are there to perform chaturmasya and to perform strict vows and different austerities like Ashtanga yogis do, or jnanis, they control the mind. So everything is about controlling the senses, because these type of transcendentalists, they have understood that the trouble is these senses. And what kind of senses? Uncontrolled senses. So we have to control them somehow or other to move on, or at least to survive, to not be dragged down, not to do karma or akarma, but to start to do vikarma, because that's where uncontrolled senses pull us into vikarma, into sinful activities. So we don't need to do sinful activities that anyone understands. Anyone meaning a sane person, a sober person will understand that. But devotee understands more than that. It's not just we avoiding sinful activities and performing pious activities. Devotees are not even interested in pious activities. Prabhupada explains in class, which he gave in Bombay, what is that, in fact, all these, he gave class on this section of these verses. So all these activities are actually on the platform of a body and mind. Even our other commentators like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that all these previous verses which describe different yagyas and different sacrifices, they say that it is does not go beyond jnana yoga, doesn't go beyond ashtanga yoga. It's mainly karma or jnana. But then we know what Narottam Das Thakur says about jnana yoga, jnana kanda and karma kanda. He says it is vishera bandha. It is a very strong, the pots of very strong poison. So Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna conscious person are not so much concerned with that. Who would be concerned of poison? Only someone who does not know that it's a poison. The Krishna conscious person is concerned not even what to speak of sinful activities. Krishna conscious person is not concerned even of pious activities. What as a devotees we can do? We can engage things in Krishna consciousness. If it helps us for whatever reason to progress. Like for example the same Varna ashrama, it is a material thing. Like Brahmana, Kshatriya, it's a bodily. Everyone knows that. There is no need to explain and argue that it is something transcendental. Even a sannyasi, it is a material thing. It's a part of a society, and a material society. It's nothing to do with bhakti. Yeah, anybody else who doesn't even know what takes sannyas can be having more bhakti. Like none of the gopis took sannyas, but they are topmost devotees. But anything material, like this microphone, can be engaged in the service to Krishna. So the same also Varnashrama can be engaged in service of Krishna. And these type of activities, like giving dhan, giving charity, distributing food or any other goods, or performing different type of things called sacrifices, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness, and then it becomes actual yagya, because yagya means Vishnu. Although some of these here I mentioned the worship of devatas like Indra and like this, but mainly yagya means engaged in service of the Lord. So Prabhupada says that what we do yukta vairagyam. So he writes that that in our Krishna conscious centers we are also distributing food. people are fond of distributing food. If some piety is there in the heart, if you need to collect some funds, the easiest way is to feed the poor, feed the student, feed old man, feed the monks, or feed whatever. So then they will give. For their purpose, it's more difficult. So feeding is easy. So, but what is this feeding? It's just a pious activity. And sometimes even that same pious activity can turn out being impious. Like many charitable organizations, including Mother Teresa, they distribute meat to eat for people to eat. Yeah, so, or even if we distribute vegetarian food only, what is the meaning of it? It's just to get to the real point, we facilitate the person's sense gratification. We facilitate person's degradation if we give only food and nothing else. So Prabhupada says that our Krishna conscious, in our Krishna conscious movement, we are also distributing food in our about 100 branches all over the world, but not directly, but through nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. So that's what I'm saying, is that all these things can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada says, if we simply act piously, that is good, but that is not perfect. By pious activities we get good birth, we get good education, we get beauty, riches. But that's not interesting. This is very gross. So that's nothing to do with interest of the Vaishnava. But we distribute prasadam because we know that this is a secret bullet, that people may not accept even Mahamantra, they may reject it, but prasadam they may take. And those who don't take prasadam, they can hear Mahamantra. So there was one devotee, she said that her mother became devotee before her birth. So they were walking in some countryside and they saw, and there was a devotee's farm, like a little temple. So, and that mother and her husband, they just had a little walk. As they were not devotees. So they went in, they saw something interesting. So devotees invited them and they gave them prasadam. So they were eating, but the mother really did not like that food. She really did not like, but out of politeness, she finished the whole thing what was on a plate and didn't take anything else and left. But she was really criticizing how was not nice and not tasty, and she didn't even understand what she's eating, what kind of food is that. But that kind of piety and politeness what allowed her to eat that food, just out of politeness, actually gave her the chance, and she ate that prasadam. So prasadam is very powerful. Knowingly or unknowingly, it affects the person's mind. So if a person is incapable to accept any other form of mercy, the prasadam can be an option. So Prabhupada says, we don't just distribute food, we distribute prasadam. So these are different types of yagyas. And as we read in the purport, the aim of it is to control senses. And why to control senses? Because by sense control, sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform full of knowledge, full of bliss, and full of life. So it's very easy to understand. The material senses belong to material world, and spiritual senses belong to spiritual world. So if we engage material senses in a sense gratification, we are in the material world. But what to do? We don't know anything else. We don't have any other option. We only know these senses, and we only see the sense objects around us. Because we have forgotten what is our real identity, which means we have a spiritual senses, we have our spiritual body, our real identity. But so by that knowledge, if we find it out, we have to deliberately transform our activities. So first thing, we engage these material senses in a spiritual activities. We engage these material objects, starting to microphone, ending to different, this dharma and this yagya and that yagya, in service of Krishna. Then slowly we get purified, like verse says that thus one becomes cleansed of sinful reactions and tastes the nectar of those results of sacrifices. So what actually stops us from experiencing the spiritual senses and our spiritual body, our real identity, our sinful reactions, this body is actually the actual sinful reaction, what we carry from the previous life. So these senses come together. So by performing these yagyas, we get purified, we get disidentified with this body, and slowly identifying with something above the body. In the beginning it will be something vague. Oh, I'm not this body, I'm Brahman, I am spirit soul, I'm not this body. But what does it spirit soul means? What does it mean I'm spirit soul? What do I do? Like a prisoner. He's not just saying, I'm not actually the prisoner. If I behave properly, I get out of the prison. So what you will do there? What you will do when you get out of prison? What will be your activity? What is your engagement? So the same us, we are here, this body is like a prison cell. So when we get out, what do? We are not just floating in the air. We can do that also, but that's not our real identity. This is just a misconception of those who does not know anything beyond Brahman. So that's what it said. Cleansed from sinful reactions means identification of this body and some more features of that. So then, having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifice. So what is this nectar of result of sacrifice? So this is some benefits in this material world. So because every of those sacrifice involves some kind of pious activities and punya. So you get something good here. So you get also some material benefit. So you taste it and you feel, oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. I was performing that yagya, I was chanting that mantra, so now I'm getting this. So, and what's the benefit of it? Because all these suggestions, although they are in a kind of platform of body and mind, all these suggestions are like a tiny steps towards the actual self-realization. So it said Brahma Sanatanam. And some acharyas describe it as Brahman. But Srila Prabhupada is saying supreme eternal atmosphere. And he gives two options, either merging into impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So why to stop only with Brahman if we can associate with Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Krishna? Because Srila Prabhupada is not advising anyone and not interested himself to merge into Brahman, neither to associate with Narayan. He is advising us and interested himself to associate with Krishna. In some other purport later on in Bhagavad-Gita, he says, Krishna has so many forms, but a devotee should meditate only on the form of Shyam Sundar. So this is Prabhupada advising us, not just out of nowhere, that's what he himself is doing, and he knows what it means. So he's giving that to the world. So for devotees, control of senses means to engage in devotional service. That is actual yagya. Srila Prabhupada in that same class, he writes that all these yagyas, they are not perfect. They are not perfect. So what is the most perfect yagya? The most perfect yagya is Sankirtana Prayai, the Sankirtan yagya. He says that everyone of our acharyas was doing, 6 Goswamis was doing that. Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Paro. Utkirtana means loud chanting. 6 Goswamis were doing loud chanting in Nartana and also dancing. So this is our most perfect yagya. So then in our lives we need to think, even about today, who of us have performed yagya of loud chanting and dancing today? We should try to always see, not just for 5 minutes in Guru Puja, a little bit like that. We actually need to see how Mahaprabhu was demonstrating the process of self-realization, how Srila Prabhupada was teaching that, and how devotees, direct disciples of Prabhupada, were used to actually do. So we should follow these examples. They are not just there because there was nothing else to do and it was boring. Sometimes we hear these statements that, because we are not eligible to perform all these big sacrifices, we are not qualified to perform all these long 10,000 years of meditations or tapasyas underwater, we cannot do it. And it's true. Who of us can do 10,000 years underwater? But why we should do these things if we have Sankirtan Yagya? So Sankirtan Yagya is not just, it's not created for losers, but it is so powerful that also losers can join in. Yeah? So it's not just we perform that Sankirtan Yagya because it is some kind of rejected things that if you cannot do anything else, okay, at least do that. No, but Sankirtan Yagya, Bhakti Yoga in general, especially Sankirtan Yagya, they are so powerful that even the completely useless persons like Kali Yuga products, like here born, can get to the supreme destination. That's why this Sankirtan Yagya is so powerful. And we are performing it not because all these other ones are so good and so great, but we cannot attain them and we cannot approach them. So let's just accept the fact that only Sankirtan Yagya is what we can do. No, it is so sublime and so perfect and so powerful that it can save anyone. It can save even an animal. What to speak of any kind of degraded human being. So we should never give in to that idea that, all those great yagyas, these all great munis and sages were performing all that. So these were so great. So this is a little concession, little something less. So that's for us. This is not like that. The Bhakti Yoga, Shravanam Kirtanam, this is the essence of Bhakti Yoga, and then others, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam. These were given by Prahlad Maharaj, who was not of Kali Yuga. So Bhakti Yoga is a general process to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is our yagya. And for some, it may seem difficult because sacrifice seems usually something like, I have to really do something very hard. But for some, even Bhakti Yoga is hard. Like we see when you start speaking about Mangalarti, or you start speaking about how is your 16 rounds going on, some people even get offended. What's your business about my 16 rounds? What's your business if I'm finishing it at 11 o'clock in the night? And then till next morning, 6, 7, I'm sleeping. What is your business about that? Yeah. So it is sacrifice for some, but for some, it's not sacrifice in a sense of doing something very hard and difficult and breaking one's neck to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. For some, sacrifice is actual real meaning of sacrifice, which means the pleasing Supreme Personality of Godhead. So yagya, it's an actual word for sacrifice. In English it sounds like something giving up and something very difficult and hard. But yagya is something which is performed for the pleasure of the Lord. So for some, it is performing for the pleasure of the Lord, and for some, it's struggling hard. For whatever it is, that's what it's supposed to do. Because what Bhakti Yoga does, it takes this ferocious snake, which is our senses, and pulls out the poisonous tongues, yeah? How you call the poisonous fungus, yes, and then these senses become harmless, it is said that only foolish child will be afraid of that such kind of snake. But intelligent man who has a wisdom will not. So this is a business of a devotee, to engage in a bhakti-yoga, especially in Shravanam Kirtanam, in Sankirtan Yagya. Then it becomes, from Vishera Bandha, it becomes Kevala Ananda Kanda. So this is what bhakti-yoga is. So, Shravanam Kirtanam, this is the beginning and the essence. Beginning means not just something preliminary or elementary. Beginning means the essence. You start with this and you continue with this. And whatever other angas of bhakti you do, you accompany it with that kirtanam. Like Haridas Thakur, it says here by Srila Prabhupada, farther on in that same class. He was also performing that type of yagya, Shravanam Kirtanam. He was chanting 3 lakhs of Nam, 3 lakhs of name of 3 lakhs of name of Hari. So in that verse from Prema Vivarta is mentioned that 2 lakhs, 1 lakh he chanted in the mind, 1 lakh he chanted with lips, and 1 lakh was Sankirtan. So this is mentioned actually the word Sankirtan. Sometimes they say, 1 lakh in mind, 1 lakh with lips, and 1 lakh loud. That's what we hear. But if you read the actual verse, it is mentioned Sankirtan. So this is what we need to do, and we should never forget. So this chanting, dancing, Krishna, Kirtana and Nartana, loud chanting and dancing. And then when we get tired, we eat little prasadam, and then we again continue like that. So hearing and chanting. So why to talk too much about that? We should actually do it. Because we can sit here whole lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and just talk that yes, we should do it. Of course we should do it. This is our process. And then we'd never do it. So we should do. So let's do. Today happens to be also Balaram Jayanti, appearance day of Lord Balaram. So I thought to read a little pastimes of Balaram. So we know in Vrindavan, Radharani is the most important personality for every Vrajabasi. Everyone who comes to Vrindavan, they have some affection for Radharani. So Radharani has her friends, her Sakhis. So what do? They also engage in Shravanam and Kirtanam. Like we know girls always something, they like to talk. And here, our girls in the material world will like to talk about, young girls always like to talk about young boys, and young boys like to talk about young girls. So in spiritual world, Radharani also like to do the same. But it's not actually the same. Because the only boys they are like is Krishna and Balaram. So that's their talk. So when they become very afflicted by separation, by not being able to see Krishna, they engage in some service, making garlands or cooking. That service, that devotional service relieves their suffering. But even if suffering still overcomes, and even that cannot relieve that pain, immediately some other girl comes with some news. Oh, Krishna Balaram is doing that. Krishna Balaram is doing this. And then everyone becomes revived and full of pleasure and satisfaction by hearing all these pastimes. So here also, in the morning we know, it's not a secret, that Radharani is the best cook. So Yashoda Mai, she wants her to come to Krishna's house, to her house, always to cook for Krishna, because Krishna does not eat and does not want to eat even anything else. So she comes. So then somehow or other she can see Krishna somewhere through the other people. So she feels happy. But then for Krishna it's time to go to forest. So again there is separation. So what to do? So then some of the Radharani's friends, they always go also to forest and look what Krishna is doing and bring the news to Radharani what they are doing. So now Krishna and Balaram and other boys, they are entering Vrindavan forest, and some of the Vrinda Devi's Vanasakis, Vrinda's Vanasakis, they bring the news to Radharani to relieve her from the suffering of separation. So we will hear a little bit and see how beautiful is the Vrindavan forest and how sweet are their exchanges of Krishna and Balaram. So this is what Radharani is hearing. Flowers beautifully decorated the forest of Vrindavan, and many varieties of animals and birds filled it with sound. The peacocks and bees sang, and the cranes and cuckoos cooed. Intending to engage in pastimes, Krishna, accompanied by Balaram and surrounded by the cowherd boys and the cows, entered the forest of Vrindavan as he played his flute. Krishna looked over that forest, which resounded with the charming sounds of bees, animals and birds, and which was enhanced by a lake whose clear water resembled the minds of the great souls, and by a breeze carrying the fragrance of 100-petaled lotuses. Krishna decided to enjoy the auspicious atmosphere. The primeval Lord saw that stately trees, which were with their beautiful reddish buds and their heavy burden of fruits and flowers, were bending down to touch his feet with the tips of their branches. Thus he smiled gently and addressed his elder brother. So this forest has prepared everything to satisfy the senses of Krishna, Balaram and their friends. So it is described that their sense of hearing was pleased by cooing of the cuckoos and different other sounds of birds. The breezes carrying the fragrance of lotuses gave the pleasure to the sense of touch. The beautiful flowers and other beautiful scenes of the forest gave the pleasure to the eyes, and fragrance gave the pleasure to the smell, to the nose. So all the senses were satisfied. So in this auspicious atmosphere, Krishna decided to enjoy. So then it says here that he saw these trees who are bending down to touch Krishna's feet. So now Krishna addresses his elder brother Balaram. So we will hear how Krishna is cleverly speaking, how actually all this is meant for enjoyment to Balaram. Because Krishna says, he is my elder brother, and if I start glorifying those trees, how they offer obeisances to me, it's not really appropriate. So let me glorify Balaram. So he says to Balaram, "Oh, greatest of lords, just see how these trees are bowing their heads at your lotus feet," he says to Balaram, "which are worshipable by the immortal demigods. These trees are offering you their fruits and flowers to eradicate the dark ignorance that has caused their birth as trees." So of course we know, although Krishna sees the mind of trees, and trees are lamenting, "Oh, we are so unfortunate, we have performed so many sinful activities to take this form of tree." And that's why Krishna says they try to touch your feet to free themselves from those sins. But actually we know that all these trees in Vrindavan, they have no tinge of sins. They are all great sages. But in their humility, they think like that, how sinful we are. "Oh, original personality," he addressed Balaram. "Oh, original personality. These bees must be great sages." So the bees are attracted to Krishna's fragrance and coming close. So he says to Balaram, these bees must be great sages and most elevated devotees of yours, for they are worshipping you by following you along the path and chanting your glories, which are themselves a holy place for the entire world. Though you have disguised yourself within the forest, O sinless one, they refuse to abandon you, their worshipable Lord. So here Krishna again has a hidden meaning, because the bees are actually following him. And he says, disguised in a forest. So when Krishna enters the secret groves of the forest to have their intimate pastimes, no one can follow, but the bees follow. So Krishna says, oh, look, they must be very great sages, that they are the only ones who can actually follow in those secret groves and witness those intimate pastimes. So again, Krishna continues to glorify Balaram. He says, oh, worshipable one, these peacocks are dancing before you out of joy. These doe are pleasing you with affectionate glances, just as the gopis do. And these cuckoos are honoring you with Vedic prayers. All these residents of the forest are most fortunate, and their behavior towards you certainly befits great souls receiving another great soul at home. So these all inhabitants of forest, like bees and peacocks, the forest is their home. So Balaram, Krishna Balaram has entered the forest, their home. So, and when a great person visits home, by etiquette, he has to be received with affectionate glance, with dance, and pleasing words, pleasing. So bees give these pleasing sounds, the does give the affectionate glance, and the peacocks dance. So Krishna, seeing this, he says, look, the great soul Balaram has entered the forest. So all these entities are receiving you appropriately. So Krishna continues, the earth has now become most fortunate because you have touched her grass and bushes with your feet, and her trees and creepers with your fingernails, because you have graced the rivers, mountains, birds and animals with your merciful glances. But above all, you have embraced the young cowherd women between your two arms, a favor hankered after by the goddess of fortune herself. Of course, this is what Krishna, who is embracing, but he's saying, oh, Balaram, you have favored all these women by embracing them. Thus, expressing his satisfaction with the beautiful forest of Vrindavan and its inhabitants, Krishna enjoyed tending the cows and other animals with his friends on the banks of the river Jamuna below Govardhan hill. Sometimes the honeybees in Vrindavan became so mad with ecstasy that they closed their eyes and began to sing. Krishna, moving along the forest path with his cowherd boyfriends and Baladev, would respond to these bees by imitating their singing, while Krishna's friends sang about his pastimes. Sometimes Krishna would imitate the cooing of swans. Sometimes he vigorously imitating the dancing of peacock, making his cowherd boyfriends laugh. Sometimes Krishna would imitate the chattering of a parrot. Sometimes, with a sweet voice, the call of a cuckoo. Sometimes, with a voice as deep as the rumbling of clouds, Krishna would call out with great affection the names of the animals who had wandered far from the herd, thus enchanting the cows and the cowherd boys. Sometimes Krishna would cry out in imitation of the birds such as chakoras, craunchas, chakrahavas, bharadvajas, and peacocks, and sometimes Krishna would run away with the smaller animals in mock fear of lions and tigers. So that's how Krishna played. He himself imitated the sound of the lion and the tiger, and when the smaller animals flee in a fear, he also was running together with them, although that sound came from him. Decorating themselves with newly grown leaves, along with peacock feathers, garlands, clusters of flower buds, and colored minerals. It looks like our Krishna Balaram on an altar. decorated with leaves, peacock feathers, garlands, clusters of flower buds, and colored minerals, Balaram, Krishna, and their cowherd friends danced, wrestled, and sang. As Krishna danced, some of the boys accompanied him by singing, and others by playing flutes and cymbals and buffalo horns, while still others praised his dancing. Sometimes the cowherd boys would play with bilva and kumbha fruits, and sometimes with handfuls of amalaka fruits. At other times, they would play the games of trying to touch one another, or of trying to identify somebody while one is blindfolded, and sometimes they would imitate animals and birds. They would sometimes jump around like frogs, sometimes play various jokes, some ride in swings, and sometimes imitate monarchs. In this way, Krishna and Balaram played all sorts of well-known games as they wandered among the rivers, hills, valleys, bushes, trees, and lakes of Vrindavan. Krishna, who knows all sports and games, called together the cowherd boys and spoke as follows: "Hey, cowherd boys, let us play now. We will divide ourselves into 2 even teams." The cowherd boys chose Krishna and Balaram as the leaders and the two parties. Some of the boys were on Krishna's side and some joined Balaram. The boys played various games involving carriers and passengers. In these games, the winners would climb up on the backs of the losers and would have to carry them. When his elder brother, fatigued from playing, he would lie down with his head upon the lap of the cowherd boy. Lord Krishna would help him relax by personally massaging his feet. So when Balaram is tired, he relaxes, puts his head on a lap of the cowherd boy, and Krishna comes and massages his feet. Sometimes Krishna grew tired from fighting and lay down at the base of a tree, resting upon a bed made of soft twigs and buds, and using the lap of a cowherd friend as his pillow. Some of the cowherd boys, who were all great souls, would then massage his lotus feet, and others, qualified by being free of all sin, would expertly fan the Supreme Lord. So these are activities in the morning while entering the forest of Krishna and Balaram. So this Vrinda Devi's messenger was saying all this to Radharani, and we also are able, by the mercy of our acharyas, to hear these pastimes. So Radha swooned in ecstasy, hearing the description of her beloved's pastimes from Vrinda's Vanasaki. Although momentarily stunned, Radha yearned to hear more about Krishna and his friends. So we learn here, and I wish that all of us are ever yearning more and more to hear all these pastimes, and thus engage our wild senses. Wild senses means that because this material world is wild, it's not sober place. So while we wish that we eternally engage of hearing of these pastimes, this is also Sankirtan. This is Leela Sankirtan, Rupa Sankirtan. But out of all forms of Sankirtan, Nam Sankirtan is the most potent and most powerful. So we should never forget that we should dedicate our days in that Sankirtan Yagya by loud chanting and dancing, and then our lives is perfect. So what does it mean our life is perfect? It's not just that our life is perfect that because my family is good, I had my chapatis today, so let me dance more in Sankirtan Yagya, then my life will become perfect. This is not even life. Life of this body is not life. Because as soon as the body is dying, taking birth, it's dying. So this is actually the death. The real life is the life of the Siddha Deha, the spiritual body. So everyone should fix their mind of doing anything and sacrificing every second of the life, of progressing towards attainment of that. And then we can say our life is perfect. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.